And what if I told you that in some regions of Brazil, there are people who swear they never leave their homes after sunset? Not because of crime, not because of common superstition, but because of something that watches in silence. Something that doesn't run, doesn't scream, doesn't need to attack right away. Something that simply waits. They say that when the night feels too heavy and the wind carries a strange whisper, it's not imagination, it's a warning. There are reports of a presence that appears on empty roads, at the edge between the forest and the village, always just beyond the reach of light. Some claim they see the eye's first two glowing points that never blink. Others say they hear a low sound, almost like a deep lament, strong enough to freeze anyone who listens. And there are those who swear that if you answer the call, if you turn your head or try to face it, it's already too late. This entity doesn't appear in school books. It isn't celebrated in festivals or told as a children's story. Quite the opposite. It lives in whispered conversations, in warnings spoken quietly, as if saying its name out loud were a dangerous invitation. Parents warn their children, grandparents changed the subject, and those who claim to have seen it rarely like to remember. What's most disturbing is that this legend isn't about a distant monster or a forgotten past. It speaks of something that still lingers, something some believe is still out there, watching, passing through generations, adapting with time, but keeping the same dark purpose. An entity tied to the night, to guilt, to fear, and to punishment. Today, here on Urban Secrets, we're talking about one of the most unsettling legends in Brazilian folklore. A story many prefer to ignore, but one that refuses to disappear. Get ready to meet Abúrucu, and after this, you might think twice before walking alone in the dark. Brazil is a land where the visible and the invisible have always walked side by side. Long before Europeans arrived, indigenous peoples already explained the world through spirits, forest entities, nocturnal forces, and beings that existed between the human and the supernatural. Over the centuries, these beliefs blended with African traditions brought by the diaspora and with European religious imagery, creating one of the richest and most unsettling folk traditions in the world. It's within this mix of ancestral fear, spiritual syncretism, and respect for the night that the legend of Abúrucu emerges. Unlike more well-known figures of Brazilian folklore, Abúrucu doesn't have a single fixed form or a closed myth. It exists mainly as a warning, a symbol of what should not be provoked, a reminder that some boundaries are not meant to be crossed. Stories about Abúrucu appear mostly in rural regions and areas close to the forest, where isolation, silence, and darkness amplify the imagination and turn every sound into an omen. In these communities, the legend isn't told for entertainment. It's passed down as a caution, a way to protect, to control behavior, and to explain disappearances, strange actions, and events that defy logic. Culturally, Abúrucu is linked to the deep night, lonely paths, and those who break unwritten rules. Don't walk alone after a certain hour. Don't answer calls coming from the woods. Don't mock what you don't understand. The legend teaches through fear, reinforcing values of caution, silence, and respect for unseen forces. Like many entities in Brazilian folklore, Abúrucu reflects the close relationship between humans and their surroundings, the forest as mystery, the night as a realm of the unpredictable, and fear as a tool for survival. But unlike stories that became widely known, this one stays in the shadows, almost forgotten, whispered only by those who believe that some things are still watching, even when no one else is. They say Abúrucu is not born as a creature, but as a consequence. It emerges when certain boundaries are crossed, when ancient warnings are ignored, when someone challenges forces they don't understand. That's why many believe it doesn't choose its victims at random. It responds, it watches, it waits for the right moment. The accounts vary, but almost all of them begin the same way. An empty road, a dirt path, a trail cutting through the forest. The heavy silence of the night, broken only by the sound of your own footsteps. Then something changes. The air feels colder. The wind dies down. Insects fall silent, as if nature itself were holding its breath. That's when Abúrucu announces itself. Some say they hear a low call, almost like a familiar voice, speaking their name. Others describe a deep sound, hard to explain, somewhere between a distant growl and a mournful lament. There are those who claim they feel a sudden weight on their body, as if the darkness itself had thickened, making every movement harder. Very few say they've seen its full form. What people describe are fragments, eyes appearing in the dark, glowing in an unnatural way, tall, distorted silhouette that never fully steps into the light. Some believe Abúrucu changes according to the fear of the one facing it, taking on vague, shifting shapes, almost as if it were molded by the victim's imagination. But the most terrifying part is its behavior. Abúrucu doesn't attack right away. It follows. It walks beside you, never fully seen. It tests courage, faith, desperation. Those who run say they hear footsteps that never get closer, but never fade away either. Those who stop feel the presence intensify, as if something were right there, breathing at the same rhythm. In many versions of the legend, Abúrucu feeds on fear. The greater the panic, the stronger it becomes. That's why elders teach that the worst mistake is to react, to scream, to challenge it, to stare into the darkness, trying to find a face. There are stories of people who vanished after answering a call from the forest. Others returned days later, disoriented, unable to explain where they had been. Some never spoke again about what they saw. And there are those who swear they barely escaped finding protection by crossing a gate, entering a house, or hearing the first rooster crow announcing dawn. Abúrucu, according to tradition, belongs to the night. It weakens with light, but it never disappears completely. It simply retreats into the shadows, waiting for the next human mistake, the next step taken beyond an invisible line. Over time, the legend of Abúrucu stopped being just a story passed down through generations and began to blend with accounts that feel far too real. Stories with no official records, no headlines, but ones that linger in the memory of entire communities. Ordinary people, with no desire for fame or attention, who claim they experienced something impossible to explain. There are reports from truck drivers who had to stop their vehicles in the middle of the road because they felt something watching them through the rearview mirror. Some say that for endless seconds the headlights lit up nothing but empty road, while a presence moved just beyond the reach of the light. Others swear they heard knocks on the metal frames low, spaced out like something walking around the truck, waiting for the door to open. People in rural areas talk about nights when animals became restless for no clear reason. Dogs refusing to leave the house, chickens panicking, horses neighing into the darkness. On some of those nights, someone heard the low, insistent voice that seemed to come from every direction at once. The most disturbing cases involve people found in a state of shock, wandering along roads or forest trails, unable to remember how they got there. Some had marks on their body scratches, light bruises, if they had walked for hours through branches and rocks. When questioned, they avoided eye contact and said only one thing: they shouldn't have gone. That's where the doubt sets in. Were these hallucinations caused by fear, isolation, and exhaustion? Or are we dealing with something that still escapes understanding? Psychologists explain how the human brain can create intense experiences in hostile environments. But no scientific explanation can fully answer why such similar stories appear in different places, told by people who have never met. Maybe Abúrucu is just a reflection of collective fear. Or maybe it's the name given to something that existed long before words, something that feeds on silence, on the night, and on human recklessness. And if that's the case, the real question isn't whether Abúrucu is real, but how many times it has already been ignored, and how many times it will still be summoned without meaning to. Maybe Abúrucu was never just a creature lurking on roads or in dark forests. Maybe it's a warning, a symbol created to remind us that there are invisible boundaries drawn long before us that shouldn't be crossed without consequence. In a world that's increasingly bright, connected, and confident, stories like this still survive because fear is still part of the human experience. What truly scares people about Abúrucu isn't its possible shape or its alleged attacks, but the silence around it, the way people avoid talking about it, the way they look away, the way they choose to believe certain things don't exist as long as they never have to face them. Because admitting the presence of the unknown means accepting that not everything is under control. Legends like this survive because they serve a purpose. They teach caution. They demand respect for the night, for the forest, and for what we don't fully understand. And even if Abúrucu is nothing more than a product of collective fear, it still does its job. It keeps people away from dangerous paths. It makes them think twice before answering a call in the dark. But if it's not just that, if something really is watching from the shadows, then maybe the greatest mistake is believing we're alone. Maybe Abúrucu exists exactly in the space between doubt and certainty, where fear becomes real enough to be felt. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever heard about Abúrucu before? Do you know someone who experienced something strange on a road or in the forest at night? Leave your story in the comments. Here, stories aren't judged, they're heard. If you enjoyed this dive into the darker side of Brazilian folklore, like the video, subscribe to Urban Secrets, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next mysteries. Because while many sleep peacefully, some secrets remain awake, waiting to be revealed.